What if I told you that one simple food, eaten quietly at the same time every week, could shape the energy of your entire life? Not just your health, but your wealth, your mindset, your discipline, and even your destiny. Sounds unbelievable, right? But for generations, Jewish families have followed a powerful Friday ritual, one that goes far beyond tradition. It's not magic, it's not luck, it's a system, and hidden inside that system is a lesson that can change the way you attract success for the entire week. Most people spend their lives chasing more money, more opportunities, more success, believing that once they finally have enough, they will feel secure and satisfied. But the truth works in the opposite direction. The feeling of enough must come first. This is where gratitude becomes powerful, not as a vague idea, but as a practical habit that rewires the way a person thinks and acts. In the Friday tradition of blessing the meal before eating, there is a deliberate pause. That pause is everything. It interrupts the constant mental noise of wanting, comparing, and worrying. Instead of rushing into consumption, there is acknowledgement, a simple recognition. I have something. I am provided for. This may seem small, but psychologically, it shifts the brain from a state of scarcity into a state of abundance. Scarcity thinking is one of the biggest hidden reasons people struggle financially. When someone feels like they never have enough, they operate from fear. Fear leads to impulsive decisions, overspending, chasing quick money, falling for risky opportunities, or constantly switching paths without consistency. Even when money comes in, it slips away because the mindset driving behavior is unstable. On the other hand, when a person consistently practices gratitude, they begin to feel grounded. They stop reacting emotionally to every financial situation and start thinking more clearly. Gratitude builds a sense of control. When you recognize what you already have, you become less desperate for immediate results. That patience is critical. Wealth is rarely built overnight. It is built through steady, repeated actions over time. A grateful mind is more willing to delay gratification, to invest wisely, and to stay committed even when results are slow. This alone separates those who build lasting wealth from those who constantly start over. There is also a neurological effect. When you focus on appreciation, your brain begins to notice more opportunities rather than obstacles. You become more aware of resources, connections, and possibilities that were always there but previously ignored. It's not that new opportunities suddenly appear, it's that your perception sharpens, and perception drives action. Someone who sees opportunity acts differently from someone who sees limitation. Another important shift happens in how you handle pressure. Life will always bring challenges, unexpected expenses, losses, or setbacks. A scarcity mindset magnifies these moments, turning them into panic. But a gratitude-based mindset creates resilience. Instead of thinking everything is going wrong, the person thinks, I still have something to work with. That difference may seem subtle, but it changes outcomes dramatically. One mindset collapses under pressure, the other adapts and finds solutions. Over time, this repeated practice of gratitude becomes part of identity. It is no longer something you force yourself to do, it becomes how you naturally think, and identity shapes behavior automatically. You begin to manage money better, value relationships more, and make decisions with long-term awareness instead of short-term emotion. So when that simple act happens every Friday, pausing, blessing, and appreciating, it is not just a religious or cultural gesture, it is mental training. It is conditioning the mind to operate from stability instead of fear, from clarity instead of chaos. And when your mind operates from that place, your actions improve. Better actions lead to better results, and over time, those results compound into something much bigger. What looks like a small moment at a dinner table is actually the starting point of a powerful internal shift. And once that shift happens, wealth is no longer something you chase blindly. It becomes something you build step by step, with awareness, patience, and intention. Most people underestimate the power of repetition. They believe success comes from big decisions, rare opportunities, or sudden breakthroughs. But in reality, what shapes a person's financial life is not what they do once in a while, it's what they do consistently. This is where weekly rituals become incredibly powerful, because they quietly build discipline without relying on motivation. A fixed routine, like gathering every Friday at the same time, creates a structure that the mind begins to depend on. It removes the need to constantly decide what to do next. And decision-making, especially repeated small decisions, drains mental energy. When that energy is wasted on unimportant choices, there is less clarity available for the decisions that truly matter, like managing money, investing wisely, or solving problems effectively. Discipline is often misunderstood as forcing yourself to do difficult things, but real discipline is about reducing chaos. It's about creating systems that guide your behavior automatically. When something becomes a ritual, it no longer feels optional. You don't debate it, delay it, or avoid it. You simply do it. Over time, this strengthens your ability to follow through, even in other areas of life. Think about how this translates into financial success. A person who builds the habit of showing up consistently, whether it's for reflection, planning, or learning, develops a sense of control. And control is the foundation of wealth. Without it, even high income can disappear quickly. With it, even modest resources can grow steadily. The Friday ritual is not just about the moment itself. It's about what it represents. It creates a weekly checkpoint, a time where everything pauses and there is space to step back from the noise of daily life. Most people move from one day to the next without ever reflecting. They react to problems instead of managing them. But a structured pause introduces awareness. It gives you the chance to mentally organize your week. What worked, what didn't, what needs to change. This habit of reflection naturally improves decision-making. When you regularly take time to think, you begin to notice patterns. You recognize mistakes earlier. You become more intentional with your actions. And over time, this reduces costly errors, especially financial ones. Poor decisions are often made in moments of stress or distraction. Discipline helps you avoid those moments or handle them better. There's also an important emotional benefit. Consistent rituals create stability. In an unpredictable world, having something fixed and reliable reduces anxiety. When your mind is calm, you think more clearly. When you think clearly, you act more effectively. This connection between emotional stability and financial success is often ignored, but it is critical. People who lack inner stability tend to make unstable decisions. Another layer is commitment. When you honor a routine every week, you are sending a signal to yourself, I follow through. That builds self-trust, and self-trust is powerful. If you don't trust yourself to stay consistent, you will hesitate to take bigger steps, like investing, starting something new, or sticking with a long-term plan. But when you prove to yourself week after week that you can stay consistent, your confidence grows naturally. Over time, this discipline expands beyond the original ritual. It starts influencing how you manage your time, your money, and your priorities. You become less reactive and more proactive. Instead of constantly fixing problems, you start preventing them. Instead of chasing quick results, you focus on steady progress. What makes this so effective is its simplicity. It's not an extreme routine or an overwhelming system. It's a single, consistent act repeated over time. But that repetition builds a mental framework, one where order replaces chaos, clarity replaces confusion, and control replaces impulsiveness. And when a person reaches that level of control, their financial life begins to change. Not because they suddenly discovered a secret strategy, but because their behavior became aligned with long-term success. Wealth is often misunderstood as something purely individual, something a person earns through hard work, intelligence, or luck. But in reality, wealth is deeply influenced by environment, especially the environment a person grows up in. Long before someone earns their first income, they are already learning how money works simply by observing the people around them. This is why the family setting plays such a powerful role in shaping financial outcomes. When families come together regularly, especially in a structured and meaningful setting like a shared meal, something important happens beyond conversation. Values are transmitted, not through lectures or formal teaching, but through everyday discussions, behaviors, and attitudes. Children listen. They observe how adults talk about money, how they react to problems, how they plan for the future, and how they prioritize what truly matters. In a setting where conversations are thoughtful and intentional, children are exposed to ideas that most people only encounter much later in life, if at all. They might hear discussions about patience, saving, investing, responsibility, or even past mistakes and lessons learned. These moments shape their understanding of money in a natural way. It doesn't feel like education, but it becomes deeply embedded knowledge. Compare this to an environment where money is never discussed, or worse, where it is associated with stress, arguments, and confusion. In such cases, children grow up with uncertainty and fear around finances. They may develop habits of avoidance, impulsiveness, or anxiety without even realizing where those patterns came from. By the time they reach adulthood, these behaviors feel normal, even though they are holding them back. A consistent family gathering creates a safe space for open thinking. It allows questions to be asked and perspectives to be shared. When younger members see older ones making thoughtful decisions, delaying gratification, or thinking long-term, they begin to mirror those behaviors. This is how financial intelligence is passed down, not as information alone, but as a way of thinking. Another important aspect is identity. When someone grows up in an environment where responsibility, discipline, and long-term planning are normal, they begin to see those traits as part of who they are. They don't feel like they are forcing themselves to be careful with money or to think ahead. It feels natural, and when behavior aligns with identity, consistency becomes much easier. Family environments also shape how people view success. In some settings, success is seen as something distant or unrealistic. In others, it is treated as a result of steady effort and smart decisions. That difference changes how a person approaches opportunities. Someone who has been exposed to constructive conversations about growth is more likely to take calculated risks, seek knowledge, and stay committed over time. There is also the benefit of shared wisdom. No individual has all the answers, but a group can offer multiple perspectives. When families regularly exchange ideas, they build a collective intelligence. One person's experience becomes a lesson for everyone else. This reduces repeated mistakes and accelerates learning. Over time, this shared understanding becomes a powerful advantage. Consistency strengthens all of this. A one-time conversation has limited impact, but repeated exposure reinforces beliefs and habits. Week after week, the same values are demonstrated, discussed, and lived. This repetition turns ideas into instincts, and instincts are what guide decisions in real-life situations, especially under pressure. It's also important to recognize that wealth is not only about money. It's about how people think, decide, and act over long periods. A strong family environment shapes all three. It creates individuals who are not only capable of earning, but also of managing, growing, and preserving what they earn. So what looks like a simple shared meal is actually something much deeper. It is a training ground for mindset, behavior, and perspective. It is where financial habits are quietly formed and reinforced. And over time, those habits influence outcomes in ways that are often invisible in the moment, but undeniable in the long run. In the end, wealth is rarely an accident. It is the result of patterns, and those patterns are often learned long before a person even realizes it. Most people believe that the key to getting more done is to keep going. More hours, more effort, more constant movement. But what they don't realize is that without proper pauses, their thinking becomes scattered, their decisions become reactive, and their productivity actually declines. The ability to step away, even briefly, is not a weakness in the process of success. It's a critical part of it. When you intentionally pause, you create space between action and reaction. That space is where clarity begins. Without it, life becomes a continuous stream of tasks, messages, problems, and distractions. You move from one thing to the next without ever fully processing what you're doing or why you're doing it. Over time, this leads to mental fatigue. And when your mind is tired, your decisions suffer. A structured pause, like setting aside time at the end of the week, acts as a reset button. It allows you to step out of the noise and observe your life from a distance. Instead of being caught inside your problems, you begin to see them more objectively. You can evaluate your actions, your habits, and your results with a clearer perspective. This is where real improvement starts. Not in constant motion, but in thoughtful reflection. Clarity changes the way you approach everything. When your mind is calm and organized, you can identify what truly matters and what doesn't. Many people waste energy on low-value activities simply because they never stop to question them. A pause forces that question. Is this actually moving me forward? And once you start asking that regularly, your priorities begin to shift. This has a direct impact on productivity. Productivity is not about doing more things. It's about doing the right things efficiently. Without clarity, you may work hard but still feel stuck. With clarity, even a few focused actions can create meaningful progress. That's why people who take time to reflect often achieve more with less effort. They are not just busy, they are effective. There's also an emotional benefit that is often overlooked. Constant activity creates stress. When you're always on, your mind never fully relaxes. This builds pressure over time, and eventually it affects your focus, your patience, and your ability to think clearly. A deliberate pause releases that pressure. It gives your mind a chance to recover, which improves your overall performance when you return to work. Another important aspect is decision-making. Many poor decisions happen in moments of urgency or overwhelm. When you're rushing, you rely on impulse instead of logic. But when you've had time to step back and think, your decisions become more deliberate. You consider consequences, you weigh options, you act with intention instead of reaction. Over time, this leads to better outcomes, especially in areas like finances, where one wrong decision can have lasting effects. Pausing also strengthens awareness. You begin to notice patterns in your behavior. What triggers stress? What leads to mistakes? What produces good results? This awareness allows you to make adjustments before small issues turn into bigger problems. Without reflection, those patterns remain invisible, and you keep repeating the same cycles. What makes this approach powerful is consistency. A single pause might give temporary clarity, but a repeated intentional break creates lasting change. It trains your mind to expect and use these moments of reflection. Over time, you become more mindful even during your daily activities, because you know you will eventually review and evaluate your actions. In a world that constantly pushes for more speed and more output, choosing to pause may feel counterintuitive, but it is precisely this choice that separates reactive living from intentional living. When you pause correctly, you don't fall behind, you gain an advantage. You return sharper, calmer, and more focused than before. And that is where real productivity comes from. Not from constant motion, but from clear direction. People often search for big secrets when it comes to success. They look for complex strategies, hidden formulas, or once-in-a-lifetime opportunities that will suddenly change everything. But what they overlook is something far more powerful and far more reliable: small, consistent habits. The reality is that long-term success is rarely the result of one major action. It is the result of simple behaviors repeated over and over again, often without immediate visible results. At first, small actions feel insignificant. Saying a short prayer, sitting down for a weekly meal, reflecting for a few minutes, or expressing gratitude. None of these seem like they could transform a person's financial life. But the impact of a habit is not measured by what it does in one moment. It is measured by what it builds over time. Each repetition reinforces a pattern, and those patterns eventually shape identity, decisions, and outcomes. The challenge is that most people are focused on immediate results. If they don't see quick progress, they assume what they're doing isn't working, so they stop. They switch strategies, they chase something new. This constant switching prevents the compounding effect from ever taking place. Consistency is what allows small actions to grow into something meaningful. But consistency requires patience, and patience is where most people struggle. When a habit is repeated regularly, it begins to influence how you think. For example, a weekly moment of gratitude might seem small, but over time it trains your mind to look for positives instead of negatives. That shift in focus changes your emotional state. A more positive and stable mindset leads to better decisions, especially under pressure. And better decisions, repeated consistently, lead to better results. There is also a compounding effect in behavior. One good habit often leads to another. When you start showing up consistently in one area of life, it becomes easier to show up in others. Discipline spreads. You become more aware of your time, your choices, and your priorities. Gradually, your daily routine becomes more structured and intentional. What started as a single small action begins to influence your entire lifestyle. Another important factor is trust, specifically, trust in yourself. Every time you follow through on a small commitment, you strengthen your belief that you can rely on yourself. This may seem subtle, but it has a powerful impact. People who don't trust themselves often hesitate. They doubt their ability to stay consistent, so they avoid long-term plans or give up quickly. On the other hand, someone who has built self-trust through repeated action is more confident in taking bigger steps and staying committed to them. Small habits also reduce overwhelm. Big goals can feel intimidating, especially when the path to achieving them is unclear. But when you break things down into simple, repeatable actions, the process becomes manageable. Instead of trying to change everything at once, you focus on doing one thing well, consistently. Over time, those small wins accumulate, creating momentum, and momentum makes progress feel natural rather than forced. It's important to understand that results don't appear in a straight line. In the beginning, it may feel like nothing is changing, but beneath the surface, patterns are forming. Your thinking is evolving. Your behavior is becoming more disciplined. Then, at a certain point, the results start to show, and when they do, they often appear faster than expected. This is the power of compounding. Slow at first, then suddenly significant. What makes simple habits so effective is that they are sustainable. They don't require extreme effort or constant motivation. They fit into daily life without creating resistance. And because they are easy to maintain, they are more likely to be repeated. Over time, this repetition becomes automatic, and the habit becomes part of who you are. In the end, success is not built on occasional bursts of effort. It is built on what you do consistently, even when it feels small or unimportant. Those small actions, repeated with intention, quietly shape your mindset, your discipline, and your direction, and eventually, they shape your results.